Hey there, I'm the Fangirl Otaku, and you saw the title. If you didn't see my last video, then you may have missed that I'm going to be voicing over these from now on. So sorry if I'm a little bit awkward at first, since I'm not really used to doing this. Anyway, what you're seeing on screen now is the full glory of some of my middle school art in the form of my Pokemon character, Cordius. I made a character for literally everything I liked as a kid. I mean, not that that habit has stopped. But like a lot of people who do this, I like to write stories and separate myself from self-insert narratives like Pokemon a bit. Like when they ask you your trainer name, it's just a little bit too personal to put in my own name, you know? I had to invent a hotter, cooler, more emo surrogate for my imagination to truly run free in that world. And I'm sure you feel the same, but I can hear Evanescence and Linkin Park playing in the back of my head as I look at this character. She just has a certain vibe that's kind of funny to look back on. It's aura is what it is, and really I should just cancel this whole video because, you know, she's perfect as is. Okay, so first I'm going to do a pretty faithful recreation of her original design. This is the piece that I referenced while I was working on this, by the way, with some more active posing and a vague attempt to mimic some of the official Pokemon artwork done by artists Ken Sugimori and Take. It's not Take, by the way. I read the thing on Bulbapedia where it phonetically is written in Japanese as Take. Sugimori in particular does these really cute rounded eyes with a little shade on top of the iris and a white dot to highlight. I think they're very distinctive, so it's the main thing that I tried to emulate here, considering I'm not really changing the actual design of the character yet. Take does this nice bold line work, but it's kind of cheating to say that I'm actually intentionally mimicking that here, because I kind of just prefer smooth, bold lines anyway. So, this is my base. If you were a kid on DeviantArt in the 2010s, you know. But no, what this really is how I do almost all of my digital work, and that's by drawing this pseudo-nude body on paper, taking a picture of it, tracing it, and doing the rest of the details in digital. Depending on the piece, I might do some or all of the other details on paper as well. It really just depends on the piece, how much detail is involved, and if I wanted it to primarily be a physical or digital piece, because sometimes I just make stuff that I want to hang up in my house. I actually really liked how her hair ended up looking here. I felt like the little flyaways in her bangs and the top, like, body part of her hair looked exactly how I would have wanted them to look when I designed this character as a little kid. However, I also feel like they kind of contradict that strong shape language that you see in most Pokemon character designs, where things are very polished and rounded. If you want more examples of that, what I'm talking about, just look at some of like the official art for the trainer classes, especially in like X and Y. In the redesign, I aim to fix that while still keeping some of the spirit of the original design. I would be lying if I said redrawing the old design after so long didn't re-endear me to it a little bit. So now that we've manifested most of this outfit into existence, I can talk about some of the things that I do and don't like about it. So one of the first things that you might notice is that this design, well, it's not exactly inappropriate in any way, it's just a little bit too, like, sexy. I don't know how else to put it. There just isn't much chill in this outfit. I mean, not that there aren't any designs like this in Pokemon itself, like Professor Kukui is straight up just shirtless under his lab coat. But she's got on these like thigh-high boots with garters, you can see her whole midsection. Way too many of my characters back then had tops with this exact same sweetheart neckline explicitly to make their boobs look good. Look, I'm pansexual, so I don't know if this was wish fulfillment for myself, a girl-kesser thing, or what, but I was a confused and slightly repressed kid. I will be de-sexifying her just a little bit, but I don't know, I think she still ended up pretty hot. I never liked the zipper that's supposed to go down the front of her boots. I could never quite get it to look right. and it seems that this is still a problem for me now because it still looks off to me in this picture. The ruffle on the bottom of her skirt, on the other hand, is something that I always had a similar problem with, but I actually do like how it turned out here. Probably because I've practiced drawing ruffles a little bit more than front-facing boot zippers over the years. The skirt didn't always have the red color underneath it, but at my previous skill level, I don't think I would have really been able to convey that even if I wanted to, so I decided it would be a fun accent. I have a habit of coming up with a sort of limited color palette for a lot of my character designs. I feel like it helps them stay cohesive. And I'll tell you, I was cooking something with this palette. I like the black, gray, and red together because it kind of helps the red pop in a certain way. I just don't think I had quite enough ingredients, so I added a little bit more red and white in the redesign. I also enjoyed whatever I was doing with this sort of T-shaped pattern on her top and bottom. It feels like a pattern I'd find on an NPC in the Pokemon universe and kind of reminds me of athletic wear, which is something that I definitely lean into in the redesign. Another couple of things that I liked about this old design were her accessories. The spiked choker and matching bracelets and anklets were like a whole mood on their own. They're really serving that edginess that I was feeling in my life at the time. And just so you guys aren't too disappointed when I get there, I did get rid of them all except for the actual choker. The choker still serves on its own, and it feels a little bit less like overkill. It also challenged me to come up with more interesting gloves and footwear. More on that later. One thing that I actually considered including in the new design were her hip belts with the Pokeballs. I really like the idea of her just being able to reach down to her belt and grab the ball. The reason that I didn't keep it is because I felt that the specific shape of the belt was a little bit limiting for a more free-flowing skirt. So I just kind of implemented the same idea in a different way. So really quick, what I'm doing here is drawing up a simple background to use with both designs. The red plaid back was, it was easy enough but popped, and the white fur cascading down from the side is supposed to represent the Pokemon Absol, who is her starter. I did the outlines and highlights in like a subtle navy blue to match the palette of Absol. Fun note though, her Absol's name is Espy, as in like Espeon. I don't know why I named her Pokemon after a different Pokemon. Maybe I was conflicted about which one she should have at the time. I genuinely don't remember. Alright, now going back to the actual character design, the black tips of her hair were something that I was definitely in conflict with, because while I like them, it's not really a design choice used on many Pokemon NPCs, so it looks a little bit out of place. If you look closely, most characters in Pokemon either have like a solid hair color or highlights, which are easier to kind of weave into the flow of the hairstyle. You'll see me here trying to color it how I used to on paper, which was very rough, and it wasn't really working out for me. I didn't like how it looked. So I try to make the design a little bit chunkier, if that makes any sense. This was ultimately my fix for this issue in the redesign as well, and I definitely think that it looks better there. Her lips. Her black lipstick was something else I considered carrying over to the redesign, but ultimately did not because I wanted to lean into a more sporty angle for the character, though I do like to imagine that behind an outwardly brash and practical personality, she has a slightly more coquettish and feminine sense of style when given the opportunity to dress up. Now if I were to color her lips, I'd probably choose between a bold red or a maroon for like outings or something, or for her like everyday wear, a coral color, because that's the lipstick that I always choose in the games. You might notice here that I'm shading with more like a maroon color instead of black or gray over her grayscale clothing. I find that it just pops a little bit more when you shade with a color that's cohesive to your piece instead of just going a darker shade of whatever color is underneath it. So what I'm doing here is some simple cell shading on its own layer at 100% opacity. Then once I've finished shading with that color, I lower the opacity to a point that I think looks good. I do this one color at a time, then merge them all into one homogeneous shading layer, but it helps to keep them separate at first because some colors need to be a little bit more or less opaque than others. This is pretty beginner digital art stuff, I think, but when you're self-taught like I am, sometimes you just learn tricks like this way later than others, and it can feel like unlocking like a whole new technique when you figure it out. So yeah, here she is, the redraw of Cordius's old design. We love a queen reprising her classical era. Here's the old art for comparison. Like I said earlier, I definitely think redrawing this design helped me remember a lot of the things that I liked about it. But with that said though, I was even more excited to see what I could do to improve it. Time to move on, old lady. Okay, so right out the gate here, we're starting with the sneakers. Shoes, feet, their shape, and positioning them properly are not exactly my strong suit, so there's definitely a little bit of awkwardness here. As I mentioned earlier, I kind of wanted to challenge myself here to make unique but practical footwear, particularly a sneaker-esque design, because I usually find sneakers boring, so I designed my characters with like something anything else. I went with a kind of chunky ankle boot with these big platforms. You'll see me going back a few times to get the treads on the bottom to look right. Like I said, I'm still practicing shoes. Gotta walk through the fire of a few imperfect pieces before you master something. One of my favorite motifs to see on NPCs in the Pokemon universe is when their clothing has references to Pokemon. Pokemon are the animals of this world, so of course they'd be on t-shirts and stuff. It's like animal print on clothes, or when a kid has a picture of a giraffe on their shirt because that's their favorite animal. So on her shoes, I put tiny Mega Absol horns on the side of the ankle strap, and in her hair I have these little bows that look like Chingling, another mon that I imagine would be in her party. I'm actually working on another piece with her in her party, so maybe when I put that out I'll take the opportunity to deeper dive on her main 6. I feel like the dark colors I used ultimately made the accent on the shoes a little bit less noticeable in the end, but it is still there, I promise. So here I just finished working on the eyes. I wanted to achieve a sort of bold, chunky eyeliner look here. Think if like Lydia Dietz's bangs were eyelashes. I like the simplified shape of her eyes for this kind of Pokemon/my own-esque art style that I was going for here, but in art that I've made of the character since, I basically just added an extra line to her top eyelid to make her a little bit more expressive. For her hair, I wanted to keep that original kind of fluffy/spiky thing that I had going on, while also rounding it out to fit that softer, smoother shape language that I was talking about earlier. I went ahead and packed most of that unruliness into her bangs while still making them look neat, and I'm actually pretty proud of how it turned out. Her ponytail was one of those things that just felt out of place to me from the beginning. However, I was replaying Pokémon X while I made this, and the solution to her ponytail was staring me in the face the whole time. In the original design, the ponytail already wasn't taut, so it worked out perfectly, just lowering where it was tied and turning the tail into a cute little knot like the XY protag Serena. Like I said earlier, I definitely think how I colored the tips looks more cohesive in this design, but I think now I would have had the black come up over the tie at the end to kind of transition better into the body of her hair. So for her body and outfit, like I said earlier, I wanted to lean into a slightly more athletic aesthetic, partially because that's just a common aesthetic among Pokemon NPCs. Like look at any of the Ace trainers. But also because I thought it gave the design a little bit more of a unique personality. I gave her a slightly more athletic build, but I didn't really want to give her like a six-pack or anything. But maybe have it just look like she walks around a lot and has a solid throw from both arms. I think this very clearly came out more in her arms than her legs, but you know, we don't complain about a mommy with nice biceps, no siree. I put her in a sports bra and skirt, the latter of which does look kind of funny here to me, but I wanted it to be flopped up a little bit so that you could see the shorts underneath. That's not very easy to achieve with pleats. And even though I said it just looked awkward, I actually do like how the pleats turned out. Sometimes you just have to give yourself credit when you recognize your skill grew, even if it's still growing. Anyway, I took that old tee pattern I liked from before and I slapped it on her shorts, adding a red stripe up the side for good measure. At a first glance, this may not seem like a huge difference in that, like, sexiness thing that I was talking about earlier, but I guess, you know, the sexiness was never truly what I disliked. It was the impracticality of the outfit. Particularly those spaghetti straps. Like, oh lord, save all of the big-breasted women from tops with spaghetti straps. A sports bra is infinitely less anxiety-inducing, because it actually holds the girls in place, and the fear of your strap snapping embarrassingly while you're out on a run is much lower. Can you tell that since initially designing this character, I've suffered? Lastly are her accessories. The gloves are, you know, a simple accent that was basically carried over, but I think their design is elevated immensely in the second iteration by having them display multiple colors in the palette instead of them just being plain black. And coloring them asymmetrically, I think, ended up really being harmonious with her top. Like I said before, the previous Pokeball belt design got in the way a little bit of this more free-flowing skirt design that I had in mind, but I still wanted to implement it. So instead, I thought up a pair of garters that attach to the bottom of her shorts via little clips. I imagine this working on some sort of magnetic principle where the Pokeball just kind of sticks right to the accessory. One thing I just want to say really quick is that I'm changing this character up because I want to for fun. I enjoy comparing how my tastes and skills have changed over the years. I don't want to imply that, say, if you have a super edgy or gratuitously sexy Pokemon OC, that your character is bad in any way, or even that I wouldn't personally think they're cool. But that's the fun thing about art. We all get to make creative choices for our own characters, and the best design for a character that you're just making for fun is one that you enjoyed making, because that's the whole point. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked it, maybe leave a like, subscribe, etc., you know. There'll be more in-depth videos of me talking about my characters and or their designs in the future. In fact, I already have a couple more pieces of Cordius specifically that I want to use to talk about her team and her story, which I've honed a lot while I was hyper-focused on Pokemon over this past year. So if you really were enamored by her in this video, stay tuned for that. With all that said, this video was actually supposed to come out way sooner last year, but while I was working on it, a lot of stuff happened. Like many others recently, I lost several people close to me, and whatever time I wasn't spending grieving, I was just busy. At a certain point, I just moved on to the next thing. I hope to be more present this year, but you know, I'm an adult, so I gotta do big lady adult stuff, and this channel simply isn't my top priority. But speaking of priorities and big lady adult stuff, my house-ridden ass has to make monies. Commissions, I do them now. There's a link to my card in the description where you can read my terms of service, see some more of my art, get a hold of me, and get an idea on my prices. I price dynamically, which means I price piece by piece. I like to think I'm pretty fair, don't be intimidated. I'm eager to work with new clients and everything. So feel free to get a hold of me anytime and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you choose to do so again in the future. Bye-bye now.